And I'm going to share my screen. Bob, are you going to want me to share a video later? I wasn't sure. I'm going to maybe optimize for video. I can't hear you, but maybe a yes.
Yes, I put a link in there and I didn't think to give you a heads up so you could try it from your computer.
No worries, we'll make it work.
I suspect it will because I think you have access.
Cool. All right. Well, welcome everyone. You're at the Western Wisconsin for Nonpartisan Voting District's monthly meeting where we want to get fair maps in Wisconsin. So I trust you are in the right place. And we're gonna dive right in. But I just want to say Happy New Year to everyone. We welcome the new year full of things that have never been. We don't know yet if these are good things or bad things, but we're going to try our best to make them good things in the new year. So welcome to the new year. If you're willing, put in the chat where you're zooming in from and how you're feeling right now. I know I expect that we'll have a wide range of feelings, but I'm interested in hearing how everyone's doing, how they're feeling. So where you're from and how you're feeling. I'm feeling hopeful, although some of you in here may think that I am pathologically hopeful, but I am feeling hopeful. And I just want to point out our meeting is on January 6th. That date is really engraved in all of our minds. And I just want to say thank you for being here because through your presence, you are supporting democracy. And through your work to end gerrymandering in Wisconsin, you are giving a lot of love to our democracy. So thank you for doing that on this January 6th anniversary. It's a good place to be. Thank you. All right, so we have hopefully a meeting that will be very interesting to you tonight. I'm really excited to hear from everyone. We will start off with the Friends of the Court brief, which many of you have probably heard about, an update on the courts. So we've got Don Leake, who started the WeMap group. I forgot to change my slide. We have Mark Leitner here.
No longer a mystery.
The mystery attorney. That was my.
I'm now a revelation.
Yeah, now you guys all know how my brain works. So welcome, Mark. Glad to have you here. Mark's one of the pro bono attorneys who helped to file the brief. And then Mel Barnes is going to help us kind of zoom out from that and get the big picture of what's happening in the courts. And then we'll talk about what's happening in our teams in Western Wisconsin, what we're doing. And then I would really love to hear from all of you. We're going to break out into small groups just for 10 minutes and talk about what ideas we have for 2022 and how we might like to have a positive impact in 2022. And then we'll hear from Carlene on statewide updates of what's happening with fair maps, and then we'll close out with what's coming up in the near future. So if you're all buckled in, ready for the ride, here we go. All right, so the first thing is that you may have heard, and I think some of you came specifically for this, that we filed a Friends of the Court brief, and that came out of an effort that Don Leake started a while ago where he told me he wanted common citizens of Wisconsin to become experts at mapping. And I thought that was a pretty lofty goal. And I'm proud to say that Don Leake made it happen. So Don, I will let you take it from here and tell us about this brief that was filed with the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Yeah, okay. Welcome, everyone. I did initiate the group WeMap, but as far as the Amicus Brief goes, it's Debbie Patel. Without her from North Shore, we wouldn't have even dreamt of this endeavor. And without her energy, it wouldn't have been accomplished. She and Cheryl Moranto, I think, deserve lion's share credit for getting the Amicus Brief set up, written, and delivered, and they're still working. So kudos to Debbie and Cheryl and all the other, we'll recognize the WeMap team in the last slide that I have. They're willing to give up their holiday days, vacation, so to speak, to get this Amicus Brief done. It's a small sacrifice in the end, but I have to tell you, from my point of view, it's probably the most intense month that I've ever experienced, at least in the last 5 years. Of course, I'm retired. And also, we're very appreciative of the lawyers that agreed to take this on without any expense to us. Thank you, Mark, Joe. It's just great to have support like that. We talked about a GoFundMe campaign, but this is just as good, if not better. So next slide, I guess, Janelle. If you want to read the brief, and I imagine a lot of you have already, it's posted several places, I guess, but you can go to Pierce County Grow WeMap. We have our own webpage there, and you can see all the other stuff that's that Janelle has put up there. I'm very happy that we've graduated to our own webpage. So take a look at it, and if you scroll down far enough, you can see some of the articles that I've written about the SB 621 map. Just a general overview, if you want to know about the Amicus Brief, I prepared this slide. It's got an introduction part, basically, that says that we wanted to voice our displeasure with the SB 621, that's the legislature's assembly map, and the whole process of redistricting, the whole fair maps things. We wanted to, with the Amicus Brief, and Debbie will say this, we want to shine a light on the whole process. We want to keep it in front of the public. This was one way we could continue. I'd have to say, at the end of November, I was really depressed because of the lease change edict that came out of the Supreme Court. And I thought, well, we can't do anything anymore. But Debbie convinced me that we can. And we want to just keep that light on the issue, and let the legislature know and the court know that we're watching. We're always watching. That introduction emphasized the testimony on October 28th that emphasized the referenda that have been passed. It noted the lack of compromise between the legislature and the governor, and just a general unwillingness to sit down and talk and get a decent redistricting job done. The heart of the brief was to show SB 621 is not totally a lease change map. That was my part primarily. And then we made some arguments to get incumbent protection, which we felt was partisan. And then we criticized the Will's, that was one of the parties, Will's strategy for picking the best map. It's very complex, as you know. I'm going to have another article coming out in a couple of weeks about the complexity of choosing a map. Look for that one. In the end, we decided that we would just focus on the assembly map from the legislature, SB 621. We urged the court to reject it. We gave them an out if they want to. I think they can still, they probably won't, kick it up to the federal court. And if not, we want the court to own the map. By that, I mean, we want them to clearly state why they chose the map that they chose, so that everyone knows that this is the court's map and not anybody else's. Next slide. So here are the people that I could go on and on about the people that contributed to this. Debbie is a fan of musicals, and I appreciate them too. I call her the unsinkable Molly Brown of the group. Just no stopping her. When we got together and argued, and I mean, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg here with the Amicus Brief when you read it. We've thrown out about 9/10 of what was written. That reminded me of the musical 1776. If you've ever seen that, it's worth watching. All the arguments of trying to get the Constitution written. And of course, Mano La Mancha here. You gotta have faith. You gotta have faith that these, Janelle likes to quote Margaret Mead about a small group of people doing big things ultimately. And you gotta have faith in doing it. And that's my word of encouragement for the evening. 5 minutes, Janelle, there, that's it.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Debbie, and all of the people who worked so hard over the holidays, putting in very, very, very long days to make this happen. So thank you. And now I'd love to pass it over to Mark. Mark, thank you for being here with us. First question for you is, what made your firm decide to a pro bono take on the Amicus Brief for the people of Wisconsin?
It's a couple things. Number one, we had previously been involved last year. We were involved in some of the lawsuits as an amicus, representing members of the NAACP and also some other organizations who were defending the result of probably one of the most scrutinized, but nevertheless, hotly contested but fair elections in terms of the process that I can remember having. And we were involved in it, and we were happy and honored to do it. And we got this opportunity came up, and we wanted to help out again, because this is extremely important. And I guess I want to jump on one of Don's words. One of his closing concepts was faith. And one of the things that motivates me greatly when I work as a lawyer is that I have to have faith in the law in two different ways. One is that I have to believe that the rules that the courts announce are going to be clear and laid out in advance. And then that I have to believe, as a matter of faith, that the courts are going to apply those rules fairly, even-handedly, to the facts before it. And we saw this as, especially when we started looking at the work product that WeMaps and that your group have, that the mapping groups have put together, we thought this is ideal for that, because what this really is taking the court at its word that it wanted least change maps. Again, there are disappointments that you can have about that particular standard, but there's a standard that's been announced, and now let's do what we can to try to hold the court's feet to the fire and give it the ammunition, give it the information that is necessary, or that is sufficient to let the law be applied fairly to the facts. And I think the inevitable conclusion that I have is that it's nearly impossible to sustain SB 621 on those principles. But again, the real reason why we did it, I guess, is because every once in a while, you get an opportunity. You remember back to the days of law school, which are getting close to 40 years for me now. And you remember back why you went to law school. You went to law school to make the world better and to change it. And every once in a while, something comes along that gives you that opportunity now. And we were honored to have that opportunity here.
Thanks. Wow, great. Did the process end up the way that you expected it to, or any surprises along the way?
The one thing that was most disappointing, and again, I think Don alluded to this, and certainly Deb and I and Cheryl lamented it often during the drafting and editing process, was that we had way more facts and arguments than we could use. The amicus brief, just so you know, the briefs of the parties can be very, very long. An amicus brief up to the briefs of the parties can be 10 times longer than an amicus brief, and even a little longer. An amicus brief of the kind that we filed is limited to 3,000 words, which is about 11, 12 pages of double-spaced text. And you got to get in and you got to get out. You got to make your point. And we left a lot of powerful material on the cutting room floor. That wasn't a surprise because we've done amicus briefs both in this context and in others in the Wisconsin Supreme Court for many years. And that's one of the things you got to get used to is there are a lot of things you're not going to be able to say. There was nothing really surprising. I was impressed at the quality of the legal analysis that was done by y'all, because the legal points are, we didn't argue a lot of law in the brief. We argued, we assumed what the law was, and then we showed how various proposals fell short of the law. You know, and you'll note that we did not, ultimately the group decided not to advocate for any map, but instead to first of all, if possible, to try to kick the case over to the federal court. And I think that is principally because the federal court is much better. The Wisconsin Supreme Court is an appellate court. It's not generally very well suited to develop facts. It's not, you know, in a trial court, trial courts are used to having parties come in and present evidence and weighing that evidence and reaching verdicts. And the federal court is made up of 3 judges who have experience in doing just that. They could have an evidentiary hearing. Their procedures are specifically tailored to do that. Not so in the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It's almost an ad hoc process. And anyone who's been following this endeavor since it first seemed like the Supreme Court was not going to pick it up, and then they decided to after Justice Rogensack's initial sort of implications earlier this year. This court is not very well suited to do that. So I think one of the main reasons that the federal court's a better place is specifically because the federal court's much better suited to receiving testimony, and you know, you have an opportunity. Someone, the expert for Will is going to come up there and testify, and then someone's going to cross-examine. And evidence is going to come in like that, and you actually get a chance. The judges actually get a chance, which will never happen here, to evaluate the credibility of witnesses tested under cross-examination. And so that, I think, is you know, that's really one of the you know, one of the big reasons why we, you know, it was a little surprising to me that we decided not to advocate for something, but when you step back and look at it, it became obvious why. Because this is really not a very good forum to make this decision. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. So maybe just real briefly in closing, where do you see that there's hope in getting better maps for Wisconsin for the next 10 years?
Well, there would be, you know, this comes back to my faith, you know, because working in the system and being a lawyer, I pretty much have to force myself to believe, sometimes against the weight of the evidence, that the courts are not only going to announce legal rules, but they're going to follow them objectively. And I think that the record here shows that AB 621 is not doesn't measure up according to the court's own measuring stick. And if the court actually takes its rules seriously and goes where the facts tell it to, it should reject that map. What I would hope for the reasons that I just discussed, I would hope that we can have a fact-finding inquiry where the 3 judges on the federal court get the opportunity to see live testimony and watch it to explained, and everybody there, all the parties, the proponents, the opponents, get their chance to cross-examine and to try to poke holes in other people's, because that's how we, for better or worse, that's how we've been finding the truth in court proceedings for centuries. And it may not be ideal, but it probably works better than most other options. And I think that's certainly the place where I would view the best opportunity for a fair map. Although, I'm not, again, based on my faith, I'm not going to rule it out happening even in the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Really appreciate you and your law firm putting in all this effort to making this amicus brief happen. And thank you for your comments tonight. Very, very helpful. Insightful.
I want to emphasize that we're really, really honored to be able to work with you and to develop this. This is, like I said, gives you the feeling of this is why I went to law school in the first place. And we got our fingers crossed that they can read it if they want to. They can ignore it if they want to. We hope they read it. We hope they take it to heart and do something with it. Yeah,
awesome. Thank you. Well, sometimes activism is the cure to despair. So that's maybe why many of us are in the room right now.
Well,
so thank you very much, Mark.
You're most welcome.
All right. So we've zoomed in a little bit on this specific amicus brief that was filed on January 4th and accepted, and we're excited to see what comes next. And we have Mel Barnes with us to kind of help us zoom out a little bit and see what's happening in both the state and the Wisconsin Supreme Court and the federal court. So Mel, I pass it over to you.
Thanks, Janelle. Thanks everybody for being here. And I really, as someone representing one of the partisans case, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Debbie and Don and Cheryl and Mark and all of you that worked on this brief. It is so helpful to have other folks stepping in and saying things that we can't in our many very long briefs as a party, but there's so much to cover here, and it makes a huge difference. And not only did you guys get pro bono lawyers, but Mark and his partners are amazing, talented lawyers, and it is often the case in legal work where you get what you pay for, and that is not the case here. So thank you again, Mark, for lending your really considerable talents to this cause.
You're most welcome.
So I want to start with where we are right now, which is just waiting for the Wisconsin Supreme Court to rule. The court now has multiple proposals for new maps in front of it, and it will need to decide if they are going to hold a hearing or take oral argument of some sort, which it would do in mid-January. Otherwise, the court will need to rule and pick maps from the maps in front of them right now. Those will likely be the maps that Wisconsin is stuck with, for better or for worse, for the next 10 years, but we'll talk a little bit about some possible challenges in federal court that might also be ahead. But let's back up a little bit and talk about how we got here. So at the end of November, the state Supreme Court ruled that the process it was going to use for choosing new maps was the least change approach. They said very clearly that they wanted maps that made minimal changes to the maps that were passed in the 2010 cycle, the current partisan gerrymandered maps that we're all living under. That really narrowed what we were able to argue before the court, and it narrows kind of the field of possible outcomes. The court was really clear that they did not want to hear arguments about partisan fairness or Republicans versus Democrats trying to rig this process. Again, really limiting what we could argue before the court and limiting some of the points that we could make. And I really want to set up that context, not just to kind of manage everyone's expectations for what the maps might look like, but really just to highlight that whatever the court decides and whatever happens with federal court, this fight is not over. We have a lot of work to do over the next decade at reforming this process and continuing Wisconsin's journey to having truly fair maps in the future. So this is at the end of November, and the court says we're going to take this least change approach. We want to see map submissions that make minimal changes to the old maps, that adjust for population shifts, and that's about it. Now, the parties had a couple of opportunities through the month of December and earlier this month to submit arguments. Everyone who was going to propose new maps to the court did that on December 15th. And we filed maps on behalf of our clients. Law Forward and our co-counsel represent Black Leaders Organizing for Communities, Voces de la Frontera, the League of Women Voters of Wisconsin, and some individual voters. So we filed proposed maps, so did many other parties. I think there are 7 state legislative proposals total before the court. Along with those maps, we filed reports from experts, experts in the Voting Rights Act, experts in redistricting in Wisconsin, supporting our maps and making arguments for why the court should pick them. All of the parties got a chance to kind of respond to each other's submissions on December 30th. And then this last chance to critique other people's maps and defend your own on January 4th, which is also when the amicus briefs were due. And as you guys already talked about, those added to the chorus of voices talking about what was good or bad about some of these maps. So the ball is now in the court's court, as it were. The court will consider all of the written submissions up to this point. And then they do have the opportunity to schedule a in-person hearing or a Zoom hearing where they take testimony. The court has been kind of lukewarm on whether or not they would actually schedule something like that. As Mark alluded to, this has been a really ad hoc process. This is not a court that is used to taking testimony and weighing evidence in this way. There's no witness box in the state Supreme Court if you go there to their hearing room. So if the court is going to hold arguments of any sort, though, they will do that January 18th through the 22nd. Somewhere in there. And I'm hoping that we'll hear from the court next week about whether or not they intend to schedule that. 1, I hate waiting, and 2, I'd really like to let our expert witnesses know if they need to be available for a hearing that week. After that, whether the court takes arguments or not, we expect that they will tell Wisconsin what our maps are going to look like, hopefully still in January. Now, because it's the state Supreme Court, they really are the final word on state law. There are a couple of opportunities to challenge whatever maps the court puts out under federal law. The main avenue would be if the maps don't comply with the Voting Rights Act. Now, Law Forward has argued on behalf of our clients that Wisconsin's population and our history of discrimination requires 7 Black majority districts under the Voting Rights Act, all in the Milwaukee area. Our current maps have 6. The legislature's proposal in SB 621 would cut it to just 5, taking a step backwards. So if the state Supreme Court does not draw 7 Black opportunity districts, that's something that we believe we could challenge in federal court because the Voting Rights Act is federal law. Now, again, I want to manage expectations a little. Even if we succeed on that claim in the federal court, it does not mean that they'll throw out Wisconsin's maps and start over from scratch, and they'll just do redistricting for this decade. What they will likely do is make some tweaks in the Milwaukee area to bring it into compliance with the Voting Rights Act and leave most of the state the way that the state Supreme Court draws it. So we could have some minimal tweaks, but just because we get into federal court, it doesn't mean that we're setting aside this really limited least change state Supreme Court map. So I want to be clear about that. Whatever happens, we have some work to do in the coming decade to make sure that we can get really fair maps for Wisconsin. And that includes legislative reforms. It includes pushing to develop better law in this area, possible constitutional amendments or changes in state or federal law to require a ban on partisan gerrymandering. Lots of work ahead of us, regardless of what comes out of the state Supreme Court, hopefully later this month. And I'll turn it back to you, Janelle.
I'm on mute. Thank you so much, Mel. That was really, really fantastic. Thank you for running through that again. I feel like every time I hear it, I learn one or more pieces of information. So thank you. So now we're going to switch over to some of our team updates. So while all this is happening in the courts, what can we do in Grassroots to make a change? One is we want to continue to push for this in the court of public opinion. We want every time the judges open their newspaper to see an article about redistricting, we want it to be top of mind. So that's one thing that we're doing. Another thing is, we still have an opportunity to get new legislation. And we need to see if we can get some representatives on board to have a new law that would create a nonpartisan committee to create the districts in the future. And even though that doesn't seem very likely now, we need to keep on pounding away at that, especially because we're currently in such a mess of a process. Let's get a better process for the future. So we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in our teams, and I pass it over to Anne.
Thanks. So I'm in charge of the legislative team. And as you can see, in 2021, we contacted legislators and a lot of the committee members sitting on that Fair Maps legislation. I would say 1,000 communications with them. And obviously nobody's getting anywhere with our legislators of the majority party. So my goal in 2022 is to find a new way to communicate with legislators, hopefully by building some bridges, finding some common ground and trying to start somewhere so we can make some connections with our legislators. So if anybody wants to work on the new message, whatever that is, the new way to try and work with legislators, I'd be very happy to hear from you. We're going to have to work with them sometime pretty soon, but I'm not sure when that's going to be. So, okay. And I also do want to announce that through Fair Maps Wisconsin, there is going to be a series of rallies around the state on January 21st. To draw attention to the Supreme Court's looking at these maps and trying to make a decision. We want, as we said before, the Supreme Court to know that we are paying attention. There will be 2 rallies in the local area, River Falls and Eau Claire. Details will come out, but I want you to start looking for your long underwear and your warmest coats, and please be available on January 21st. It's a Friday at noon. It will be 30, 45, not longer than an hour rally. We hope to have some speakers. We hope to live stream this. But again, what we're trying to do is let the Supreme Court know the people of Wisconsin are watching them. So again, if you want to, in the chat, if you're interested, you want some more information, let us know. We will be pushing out this information as we get more and more details. But come and bring a friend. We would like at least 25 people in each location. 50 would be wonderful. Doesn't matter the weather, be there. Democracy needs our support.
Thank you, Anne. And for those of you that don't live in Western Wisconsin, there are at least 13 other locations, and I think that's in Carlene's slides, but I'll be sure to reference those in the follow-up email so that if you're not in Western Wisconsin, you can still find your local rally. I want to share that next week we're going to start working on a presentation for our local Chamber of Commerce. So we know that local businesses have been impacted by gerrymandering, and so we want to create a really strong case to get local business leaders on board, to contact legislators, encouraging them to support Fair Maps. So if this is something you're interested in, we're going to be doing some research, putting together a presentation in the next month. Put it in the chat and I'll follow up with you after the meeting. But yeah, this will start next week. And then a big shout out to the Western Wisconsin for Nonpartisan Voting Districts writing team. And I'll go through in December. These are the articles that got published. One is Wisconsin Supreme Court rules against majority of Wisconsinites. Irene Boogie, who's on this call, wrote that really great article. It was published in 4 newspapers. We then sent around the Fair Map Coalition's letter to the editor that was titled This New Year's Resolution, which mentions kindness and fairness, and that got published 3 times. And then we had a very fun poem written by Maureen Ash, titled All I Want for Christmas is Fair Maps, and that got printed 4 times. So the next one coming out will be about the Amicus Brief. So keep your eyes peeled. And then also, if you subscribe to a newspaper and you would like to help us get letters to the editor out, please let us know. If you're in Western Wisconsin, we'll add you to our group, and the Fair Maps Coalition has a statewide group as well doing that. So that there's an opportunity to do it even outside of Western Wisconsin. So that, and now I pass it over to Bob.
Very good. Thank you, Janelle. First off, we ran I think a GoFundMe campaign, raised $800, and that will be used to promote some of the work that we're talking about here. We probably have about 30% of that money earmarked for various projects, and then the rest of it will be used for similar projects. We have what I call a focus initiative, and I think of it in this, where we're targeting GOP reps with the slimmest victory margins. And it really came from two background things. I was reading a Lyndon Johnson biography, and Lyndon Johnson was the master of finding power where there is none apparent. Well, we don't have a lot of apparent power, so where could we maximize our power? And we're going to try an experiment where we think we can maximize our power on the representatives with the slimmest victory margin. The second background idea that led to this is, I don't think of myself as having one representative. I think of myself as having one assembly with 99 representatives. And I urge every one of you to think of it the same way yourself. We have an assembly. We own all 99 representatives in there. So I don't have to stick to Western Wisconsin, is where that gets us. We've identified 3 targets: Shannon Zimmerman in District 30, just because he's nearby. He had about 55% of the vote. The more interesting ones, Dan Knodel in Germantown, I can't remember for sure, but I think his was about 50.5% of the vote in his most recent election. We're working with Lynn Carey and a team. We'll be putting together some videos from them a little bit later. Ken Skoronsky in Franklin, he might have had, let's say, 50.6% of the vote. We don't have anyone in Franklin right now. There's not a single person in Franklin that we know to work with, but we'll try to find them. So these are the people we consider the most vulnerable. What amount of power we do have might be most effective on them. And then there are a couple of different things we could do. The first one is to try to use this focus effort on a video I call, What Would You Say? What would you say if your representative supported the Fair Maps bill for a nonpartisan committee? And we've gathered some clips of constituents in Shannon Zimmerman's. And it is we'll have to find out how we can leverage this the most, but it is definitely this is a future situation if they supported it, and we end it with, unfortunately they haven't supported it, and a call to demand action. If we have a minute, Janelle, I would show people what this video looks like right now, and it's nearly finished. This is what we have for the 30th district.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think if you just click on that top.
Yeah, I'm just going to stop sharing and restart sharing so that I can get everything going good.
And I did that top graphic there, I linked to the file. And so if you click on that, it should call it up.
Okay, perfect. And I think, oh, hold on.
What would you say if your representative supported the Fair Maps bill for Hudson River Falls?
Sorry, take 2.
That's okay. It took me 7 takes to get my clip, so.
Okay, here we go.
What would you say if your representative supported the Fair Maps bill For Hudson, River Falls, and the surrounding areas, that representative would be Shannon Zimmerman.
If Shannon Zimmerman supports the Fair Maps bill, I'd be so relieved, and I would say thank you.
If Shannon Zimmerman agreed to publicly support the Fair Maps legislation, I would say thank you, Representative Zimmerman. Too many politicians let power go to their heads. I see that you are using your power from your heart. We appreciate it. Thank you.
If Representative Zimmerman voted for truly fair maps, I'd say thank you for doing right by all of us in Wisconsin.
If Shannon Zimmerman publicly supported the Fair Maps bill, I'd be pleased, but more than that, I'd be proud. That's the kind of leadership Wisconsin needs, to take a problem and fix the structure behind the problem. Thank you, Shannon Zimmerman.
So ideally, and this will wrap up my report, ideally, we'd be able to get enough social media play, and we would specifically focus on media people, because what I would love to do is have reporters asking Shannon Zimmerman, Dan Knodel, Ken Skoronsky, hey, have you supported this? Have you seen this? Are you willing to support that? Because these are the people that if there was pressure from reporters, might bend to that more than other representatives that have a higher victory margin. And Janelle, that's my update.
Thank you, Bob. Awesome. I love it. So now we're going to pass this over to you. We want to hear from you. 2022, what are your thoughts? It's going to look very different than 2021. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put people into smaller groups. I'm going to exit out of this real quick. And when you're in your groups, there are some questions here for you to ask. I'm going to put in the chat a document, and if someone from your group is willing to take a couple notes on what you talk about, you can put the notes straight into this Google document that I put in the chat. And if you don't want to put them there, you can always type some notes in the chat when we come back, or you can send me an email. But I'd love to hear what your group talks about. And the questions are, so first you can introduce yourselves, choose one person to take notes. What are the most important ways we can strengthen our democracy in 2022? And then what are some ways we can make your ideas happen? This is like tactics that you've thought about that you could use, like the video idea that Bob has, or what are the ways that you would like to make that happen? So I'm going to create the rooms, and you can go meet your fellow Fair Map activists or friends of Fair Maps. And then I'll bring us back in about 10 minutes. And then we'll ask just a few people to share what they talked about in their groups. So it has been a while since I've made groups, and now I can't find my link. Hold on. I'm going to stop sharing. This is embarrassing. I can't find my put people into separate groups. Well, we are going to change our plan because it is nowhere to be found. Okay, well, we are going to change our plan. We're going to just open it up and listen. So if anyone has an idea they want to share, what are the important ways that we can strengthen our democracy, and what are some ways that you would like to see that happen? If you're willing, just raise your hand and I will take some notes.
And if you want to call on people, I can take notes while you're doing that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sure. Thank you, Carlene. Pat, do you want to go first? And then if you don't mind using the raise hand option that's in the reactions on your lower bar, because I saw you, Patrick, so you're good, but I don't see all the screens. And if you use that raise hand in the reactions, then I can see you come to the front. So, but let's start with Patrick. What idea do you have? Or what do you want to share? You just need to take yourself off of mute, please.
Okay, there we go. Okay, yeah. You know, when they're talking about, all these presentations, like this fantastic video presentation you made on how would you feel if Shannon Zimmerman supported fair maps, I think that's a very powerful a medium, a means to, get the word out, not only to, local folks, but also to the general public. And I was thinking that, Wisconsin Public Radio, they always have these forums going on. And I think there's one affiliated with the university here in River Falls. If you can somehow get this, maybe get in contact with somebody from Wisconsin Public Radio to get this word out to people that listen to Wisconsin Public Radio, and even mention the video that he presented, which I think is an excellent video. I think that might be a powerful way to get the message out.
Thank you, Patrick. Great tactic. So reach out to Wisconsin Public Radio and see if there's some way we can get some coverage. Awesome. Ellen?
Well, I've had this idea just recently because of the concern about fraudulent elections and everything. I think it would be really great if we could make it part of high school education, that high school students could intern at elections and be present when they see what all the fail-safe mechanisms are that are incorporated into our elections. Here we have Kathy Bernier, who's been a county clerk. She just can't swallow her experience and pretend that elections are easy to defraud, because she's been there. If more of our young people have been there for a little bit as part of their growing up experience, I think they would carry that faith better.
Great. I like thinking about future generations. I think that's really, really good. Not that I hear you saying you're giving up on the current people, but
because yeah. Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Great one. Anyone else? Tactics for fair maps or beyond fair maps? What are ways that we can strengthen our democracy in 2022?
This is Linda Hendricks, and I'm on audio only. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it, Linda.
Okay, good. I've been having a thought for a while about it goes beyond fair maps in the sense that it's calling out the Republicans on the bills that they are supporting and the bills that they're blocking. I don't know if you know who John Calabrese is, but he ran in the 29th district. And he told me once that the most effective thing to do is to look at and focus on the bills that are being passed and really push that out there to the public. And so I've been thinking about having a weekly, organized post on Facebook that can be shared everywhere, where, for example, you say, not fun fact, Wisconsin, and then say in January 2021, the Republican legislature passed bill blah, 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 which did so-and-so, and just put every week put a bill out there showing that, for example, they didn't accept Medicaid expansion. And for example, that they're pushing for more canned hunting in Wisconsin and the sporting freedom package bills and things like that, just to get it out there to the public so the public knows. And then at the bottom saying something like, please vote blue 2022, something like that. That's kind of what's been going through my mind.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Linda. I like that idea of giving more information to people, making it really readily available on what's happening on votes. And then I'll just say that our group is nonpartisan, so we're not advocating for either party, but we are based on issues, and we do care about strengthening our democracy. So thank you very much, Linda. Mary Kay?
Yes, I put in the chat the other event, the evening before the 21st rallies. That evening, it's another, you get a chance in advance to see the film, Can You Hear Us Now? But how this differs from some of the other presentations is that when we gather to discuss, it is speakers who are at the front lines, and 3 of them are from Native reservations where, I think of my gerrymandering down in Southwest Wisconsin, but the way peoples who are vulnerable or have been, haven't had really a voice for, well, if we remember what was going on in the 1800s with the Removal Act, they were, shunted out of Wisconsin, and only most of the tribes and only came back in bits and pieces. And I mean, there's all kinds of federal policy that was really bad, but to keep the those reservations together as much as possible, and redistricting is important, and it isn't talked about very much. But we also have speakers from Milwaukee and other areas too, and but really to discuss the real life impact on themselves and their people. So
fantastic. Thank you,
yeah,
Mary Kay. Great
yeah.
opportunity, and thanks for putting that in the chat. I'll put that in the follow-up notes too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Claudia.
I just would like to expand on Linda's idea, not just what votes were or what bills were passed in the legislature in terms of issues, but I think it's important to focus on legislation that is addresses the key issues facing Wisconsin: healthcare, education, etc., environment, and follow them to the reality. They never even get out of committee to have a hearing. And we did that as a team in West Madison, had a forum, which was pretty well attended, and really focused on the number of bills which never ever got out of committee for even a hearing. And people are shocked by that. When we share that with our community, they are really unaware totally. And that's all because of gerrymandering.
Yeah, including the Fair Maps bill, which is stuck in committee. Yeah. But very good idea. Very good idea. Because the bills that come to the floor are the ones where people already know they're going to pass, right? So there's all these other bills that are hidden.
They languish.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you for pointing that out. Great addition to Linda's already good idea.
And I would like to point out who chairs those committees and hold them accountable.
Yeah. Great. Debbie?
So this is, the only thing I wanted to share is that these ideas are great. And I think it is possible that the Supreme Court will make its decision in January. And that decision may not be one that this group and other groups like. So my thought on how to help further democracy if a bad decision comes down from the Supreme Court is to not lose faith and to not give up, and to show up in February at your February meeting. And I was doing some research on the women's movement some time ago, and after there was a big vote in the Senate in Washington in 1878, and the amendment allowing women to vote was shot down, the women's movement was set back more than a decade. And getting deflated is not the right approach. So no matter what happens in the Supreme Court, come back to this meeting in February and continue to strategize. Because one of your slides, I think one time said that we are powerless when we give up power. They will take as much power as we give them, something like that. So that's just my guiding principle for getting democracy is just to keep coming back.
Yep. And I'm 100% on board with that. And to kind of piggyback on what Bob said too, there's always ways to find power to create change. We might have to get a little more creative, but there are always ways. And when I think of women getting the right to vote, or same-sex marriage, or things like that, at one point people thought was impossible. You have no power. Why would that be able to happen? And then it happens. So yeah, thank you. Any other ideas? I've been thinking also of electoral reforms. Fair maps is an electoral reform. What other ones are there that we could work on that would maybe help us get closer to fair maps in the future too? Anyone have any thoughts about other electoral reforms that could also strengthen democracy? Barb?
Thank you. Well, the president today made a very, very powerful speech in the rotunda, but he also brought up the two bills that are sitting in Congress. One of them being the John Lewis, and I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the other one, but and I'm not absolutely clear, Janelle, as to which of those bills will make redistricting changes that would be federal changes. But maybe one of the things, I don't think it should be the only thing, but one of the things we should do if the Supreme Court does not act the way we want them to, is to start supporting those bills more. I don't know, I haven't really followed up. I kind of think it's senseless to tell Ron Johnson anything because he's not listening to us. But on the other hand, if we don't speak up, he isn't going to gather those people that he, but anyway, you know how that works.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to ask about is, the idea was promoted that we would get some high school students to the polls to work. I'm in River Falls or close to River Falls, and it would certainly seem to me high school students are great. They can be powerful, but they're not voters. How about getting college students to the polls to work? And I know that a lot of our clerks are really pressing because they are going to be shorthanded at the polls in February and in April. So if you haven't signed up to do that, perhaps that's your opportunity. The last thing, Janelle, and I don't mean to take over, but I'm sorry, just went on my mind. I'll come back at you.
Okay, sounds good. So yes, on pushing for federal changes, absolutely. We could, with the For the People Act, we could end the gerrymandering at the national level. So really important to advocate for that. Yeah, thanks for your ideas. And why not both? Why not high school students and college students?
Yeah, right. Hey, Janelle, it keeps going in and out of my mind, but we were talking about advertising bills that come up and don't make it through the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
Can we also say how our representatives, at least in this area, the ones that represent all of us that are here tonight, can we at least put something in there that tells us how they voted on those issues? Or is that too partisan?
No, we can talk about how people vote on issues. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And where would we publish that so that citizens get to read it?
Right. So I think Linda suggested Facebook, but let's think about that some more. Thank you. Great. Thanks a lot, Barb.
Mm-hmm.
Irene?
I'm intrigued with the final five voting, and this was an At the issues briefing with the League, we heard a presentation on that, and she really spoke about it as being kind of on a parallel path with fair maps, but a different approach. And I don't know if you're an individual who might not like to be primaried out, if the idea of Final Five would appeal to you because it is at the primary level. If we could get better candidates, or we could get candidates that would be willing to participate, and if that would be something that ultimately we could leverage more fair elections. So I'm intrigued by the idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. Final Five. And I might throw in there like ranked choice voting. Those are other electoral reforms that I think could help move fair maps forward. That's really great. Thank you. Good. Well, sorry you didn't get to meet each other in small groups, but thank you for everyone for sharing your thoughts. And if there are others, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to think of it right now. If it comes to you later, feel free to drop me a note. In February, we're going to really take a deep dive into what should be in store for us in 2022. Where can we find power? How can we put our energy to use to create the most positive change possible? So some of you may decide to join when we strategize over what 2022 has in store, but I encourage you to just be thinking about it during the month of January, and feel free to reach out with any ideas at any time. So thank you, everyone. All right, and now we will pass it over to Carlene for our statewide updates. Oops, you're on mute.
Hi, yeah. I've been having a lot of trouble with my sound, and sometimes I'm not sure if it's me or my computer or my earbuds or what. So I'm a little discombobulated where sound goes. I also took notes, by the way, in the Google Sheet, so you have both of those now.
Thank you very much.
I didn't realize you were taking notes on the screen. So yeah, so if you want to go to the next slide, I just threw this one in here because I did see that there are a lot of people on this. So you're not sharing your screen right now. I don't know.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah. So there we go. There's been, you heard about the January 21st rallies that are happening. These are simultaneous rallies around the state at noon on Friday the 21st. And you heard from Mel that's the week that the court has set aside for hearings if they choose to have them. So it'll be Friday of that week. So if they choose to have them, we don't think they will have made a decision by then. And so the Platteville is highlighted because we don't have a coordinator for Platteville right now. But we do have coordinators for all of the other places. So if you're close to one of those and you want to know more and you don't know, you haven't heard anything yet, or you weren't on the call last night when we talked about this, please just shoot me an email, Carlene@fairmapswi.com, and I can give you information about the rally in your area. We launched the idea. We have some ways that we are supporting folks around the state, but they are actually not being coordinated by us except to, provide some logistical support. So it's however communities decide to do their rally. We're hoping for at least 25 people at each one of them. And if we get over 50, we are going to be like, woohoo, that's great. So please plan to get your long johns out, some hand warmers, your mittens, your balaclava or whatever you call that thing that covers your face on over your COVID mask. Definitely COVID masks, and come on out. And Amanda, I just saw that you're on here. Do you want to talk about this one?
Sure, I can do that.
Thanks. I've been here the whole time. I just have been off screen because I was eating and nobody wants to see that. So the writing team has a letter ready to go out. We are hitting the Freedom to Vote Act really hard in January. In these slides, which will go out to you, that Freedom to Vote Act in big capital letters, if you click on that, that will link you right to the Google document with the letter. It's 262 words, but we always encourage customization. There are a couple of paragraphs in that letter that have a lot of stuff listed. The Freedom to Vote Act is just like chock full of stuff. A lot of you probably already know this, but it's got, you know, it expands voting rights and election security and finance reform and, you know, all that stuff. So we list a lot of that. And so if you think that there's a piece of that, any piece that might not resonate in your community as well, feel free to take some of those out, not because they're bad things, but because we want broad support for this. So please customize it, make it your own, and send it out. And if you do send it out, let me know where you submit it. And if it gets published, please send a follow-up email with a link or a photo of it in the paper. And my email is at the bottom there, amanda@fairmapswi.com. And we're already hard at work. We have 2 drafts already for next week to go out. One has linking up to the Packers being in the playoffs, linking it to Fair Maps, and another one linking it to MLK Day on the 17th. So you'll be seeing a couple more coming out too if you're on the email list. If you want to join it, email me. That's it.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks.
So the other thing is that we are hosting a training, an activist training that's just going to be a day and then another half day. So the day-long training will be on Saturday, February 5th. Be 4 sessions: building power, engaging people in the movement, narrative and messaging, and strategic planning. That'll be the day long on the 5th. And then 3 weeks later, there'll be half day, probably more like 2.5 hours of check-in and follow up to just see how folks are doing with that. Next slide, please. And it's always a good idea to do this with more than one person. I know several folks from your team are participating in the Land Stewardship Project's training, but if there's some others who would have liked to have done that but couldn't and would like to just get kind of a really intense day of training, please join us. We're doing pre-registration right now. That link will take you to the site where you can register, and there are no fees for this, and materials will be provided later on that you can prep for this. I think we've nailed down our 4th trainer today, and so I'm really excited about what we'll be able to offer. And then kind of building on what one of the suggestions that was made earlier, I know you all probably, several of you probably know Julie Emery, who does a lot with rural organizing. She's consulting with the Wisconsin Voting Rights Coalition about clerks and supporting clerks in the work that they do, helping them get what they need. There's a link there to the project description. She gave a presentation for those of you who were there at the meeting last night about just the incredible variety of things going on across our 1,852 polling clerks and municipalities that have different voting places across our state. I know some of you talked about helping at polling places. Amanda more than me, both help in our little village of Oregon here. And we know that clerks really need support. And so if you're interested in helping with that and helping make sure that everyone is given the opportunity to vote, please read the program description and complete the interest form. And Joe Waldman from All Voting is Local will be in touch with people who are interested in being part of that project. And that's what I have for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlene. It's so nice to have Amanda and Carlene with us to help connect us to the statewide effort. So really appreciate you making the time. So what's next? First, I want to say there's a lot to do in 2022. I know we didn't make a huge list today, but we are expanding our capacity to do more work. And so next time we meet on a monthly meeting, our organizing director will be with me. So I'm really excited for all of you to meet our new hire and be able to accomplish even more in 2022 with all of you. And I want to actually, Debbie, are you on here? Do you want to speak up about your meeting? Or do you want
I'll just say that our monthly meeting is next Monday night. And we're going to take a deep dive into the Johnson, the case that's now in the Supreme Court. You all heard from Don. We'll be talking with Cheryl and Joe Good, also with the law firm that helped. And then Professor Rob Yablon is joining us, and legal scholars also filed an amicus brief in the Supreme Court. And so we're going to hear from him. And then we're having Daniel Hessel from the Harvard Election Law Clinic he's looking over the various documents that were filed to talk about the case. And then I'm really excited that Walter Olson, who is the Republican co-chair of the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission, is popping back to tell us how their job is going. And Maryland was gerrymandered by Democrats, and they're having similar issues in Maryland as we are having here. So it's going to be a packed meeting. It should be pretty good.
I highly encourage you to go. It's always a fantastic meeting. So thank you, Debbie, for sharing. So don't forget, fair courts and gerrymandering, save the date, January 21st. We'll be in River Falls and Eau Claire in Western Wisconsin and all across Wisconsin. So be sure to save the date. Our next meeting is on Thursday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. And in preparation for the rallies on the 21st, we're going to prepare our chanting. So the first one we're going to test out right now. So everyone take yourselves off of mute. We're going to end the meeting right now. And I'm going to say fair courts, and you all are going to respond by saying end gerrymandering. All right? Are we ready? All right. Fair courts.
And
gerrymandering. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic evening.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.
Good night.
So long.
Good night.